Record. All right, and we'll start in 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone. My name is Sam. Welcome to Foundations for Success with Sam. I'm your host, Sam, obviously. I'm here with Francesca. And tell me about yourself. So I don't know how to pronounce your last name. I'm going to go ahead and be honest about that.
That's okay. My last name is Anastasi. It's kind of like Anastasia with no A at the end.
Okay. So thank you for coming on the podcast. How are you doing?
I am good. Happy to be here and get to know you and answer whatever questions you have.
Awesome. So why don't you tell me about yourself? Tell me what you do, sort of your day job, how you got there.
Well, my day job is kind of fun and intense. I have really long days. I'm self-employed. I run 2 businesses. One is coaching in the business aspect for people who want to start the business, primarily in the creative arts. And the other business is an organization that I started 10 years ago, and it's about creating awareness to lower the statistics of domestic abuse. I do public speaking, I do training, I do all kinds of things. And my background, I used to have a dance company as well. So I kind of dabbled in a lot of different areas. I'm very versatile in the whole business world. And yeah, that's it. That's it in a nutshell.
So what would you describe yourself? So on your website, you say you're a mentor, you're a trainer, you're a consultant, you're a strategist. So how would you define your title?
I would say that I'm an advocate for any human being that wants to do better, whether it is in their personal life or business. I love people who want to grow and find ways to do better and be better. And basically leaders, people who want to be leaders or are leaders and want to be even better leaders.
I love that. That's really good. So yeah, I see a lot of people who I feel like are going to be great leaders one day in school, but we're kind of going through a weird time. So how do you think that's sort of your job specifically as a mentor and a sort of someone who's helping people become these leaders? How do you think COVID has impacted these people?
People who want to be leaders or people who are leaders?
I guess yes, both of those.
I think as leaders, we tend to want to be the better person. And as leaders, we also need to have a vision on what it is that we want and what we want to see around us and what we see around the world. So anyone who has that naturally, by instinct, that they're naturally leaders, they tend to go through tough times a little bit. They're able to cope better, and then they tend to take charge of helping others while others are going through tough times. So natural leaders tend to do that, try to find solutions and try to build teams. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody can be a leader. So we're all influential, whether we like it or not. We influence people. So at the end of the day, we have the choice of how we want to impact the people around us. So what we do, what we learn, and what we implement is what ultimately impacts the people who are around us. And you can be a leader in a very small, just in your own household. You're not a leader because somebody's giving you the title. You're a leader because of what you do and how you impact other people and how other people see you as well. So how you influence people.
That's really good. I like that a lot. So how do you feel like your business specifically has been impacted by COVID? Do you see yourself doing everything? Have you initially been doing everything online? Sort of, I'm sure the speaking opportunities are not there as much.
They're different. It's gone virtual. Interestingly enough, I've actually been busier through COVID than ever before. With both my businesses. On the business training side has been more because a lot of people have been thinking about, well, maybe this is a good time for me to start my business. I lost my job or I'm at home not making as much. So they've been considering, some people have started their businesses during COVID and they've needed that help. And with the other organization, with the domestic violence has increased over the period of COVID during the lockdown. So because of that, I've been busier as well. So a lot more people reaching out, wanting help. So in my case, personally, it's been busier.
Yeah, I definitely can imagine that with everyone being cooped up in their homes, the domestic violence has probably amped up a lot. I remember seeing something along the lines of how the domestic violence issue has been a lot worse for women specifically, especially with COVID occurring, everyone being cooped up in their own homes. Do you see, do you see, I guess that's not the right way to place this question. How do you go about the steps of when someone comes to you about their domestic violence and comes to you looking for help? How do you go about helping them? What is sort of the steps you take yourself to help these people?
Well, we first have to assess what the situation is. Is the person in immediate danger? Would they have to like really get away right away? Are there children involved? Every situation is different. If there is a family member or friend that they can go to, that's one step. If they don't have anyone, then there are shelters. So my recommendation is to guide them and point them to a shelter that is close to them. And then legal advice, because every situation is different, especially if there are children involved. You can't just take your kids and not let the the other parents, even if they're an abuser, you don't have the law on your side, because if they're abusing you, they're not necessarily physically abusing the children. And even if at that, you have to prove it. So legal advice, the local shelters, hotlines. It depends on the situation. Every situation is different. There are a lot of similarities, but pretty much that's my role.
That makes a lot of sense. Do you work with a team? Are you in a lead position of a team, or is it mostly sort of you directing everything?
I I founded the organization 10 years ago. And so I started this, and yes, we have team members. We have 100, this year we have 100, everyone works voluntarily, so it's all based on volunteers. So we have, this year we have 182 teams around the world doing this. So they participate. What we do is when I started it under the guise of a flash mob. So putting the dance into it. So let's do a flash mob, let's dance and donate to the local shelters. And from that, it kind of evolved. So now every team that participates every year, when we do this, they choose a local domestic shelter where they are at. So everything is connected. So we have all the information on our website. But if something comes to me, depending on where that person is, I may direct them to that area. But I have all the connections to the domestic violence shelters. So they can come to me, or they can go to one of our team leaders, which has happened a lot.
So how do they find you? Do you have ads up around where you are, around where these other teams are? Is it mostly word of mouth?
It's mostly word of mouth, and the fact that we do dance. We have our shirts. I'm not wearing one right now, but we do. Our shirts can pretty much say, we have a poem on the back, on our backs, that pretty much say what we're doing this for. And just we've been doing this for 10 years. So wherever we are, wherever there's a team, people know, for the most part, who we are and what we're for, what we're doing.
That's really great. So do you guys work like closely with law enforcement in helping with these domestic violence situations? Or are you mostly for the victim here?
We don't work with the law enforcement at all. We just kind of like the in between. If somebody comes to us, we just say, where are you at? What's the situation? This is where you need to go. This is who you need to contact. So we're kind of sort of like the first place to call. We're not really the first place to call. We're not really the person that they should be contacting, but we do get a lot of that. Our role is to have our team leaders in all the different locations spotlight where the shelters are, so if anybody knows where to go.
So you guys kind of like direct people towards the right way to go about
Exactly. Yeah, and let them, we want them to be aware that if they do find themselves in that situation, or they know someone who needs help, that there are local resources. That's something that a lot of people don't realize. I was one of those people. I was in a situation where I needed help, and I didn't know these shelters even existed. So that's where the whole idea came from, is how come I didn't know about it? It wasn't very public knowledge. So let's make let's let people know that these places exist, that the resources are there. So why not make them known?
So is that how you got involved with making this organization? Was it like sort of directly after your own issues?
No, ironically, it wasn't. I actually started the organization because, as I said, I used to have a dance company, and it was through the dance I thought it would be fun to do something where I would get my competition come together, and let's just do this big flash mob. Let's get all our students together, and then it kind of evolved from there. And I have a lot of stories. I don't really want to get into all my personal stories in this particular conversation, but I had my story, and then while I was running this event, I was in the middle of another abusive relationship, which I did not recognize because it was not physical. So it was all at an emotional level, which is a whole other thing we're doing, is bringing the awareness of the toll emotional abuse has. And that typically happens as a precedent to physical abuse. So it's a big warning sign to be careful.
Yeah, specifically with college students, I heard it was something, I might be wrong about this, but it was something around like 1 in 4 college students face either domestic or sexual abuse from either their partners or their peers. And so do you see a lot of students coming to you specifically, maybe college students, any kind of higher education?
I personally haven't, but I do know counselors that have that deal with that in their schools, in their colleges where they work. The one, as far as statistics go, if you actually look at the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, their stats say that almost 50% of relationships, whether they're married or not, almost 50% of relationships experience some form of abuse. So the statistics are pretty high. The 1 in 4, it's actually 1 in 3. I'm not sure what the 1 in 4 you're referring to is specifically, but I know 1 in 3 women is in her lifetime is a victim of sexual and domestic violence, and 1 in 7 men. So men are not excluded from this. It's not just women.
That's really fascinating. I didn't realize the numbers were quite that high. I knew they were high, but I didn't know they were in the 50%. That's so what demographic do you primarily see with these? Do you see it in is it sort of very broad? Is it sort of very diverse group of people?
It's across the board. In the United States, every 9 seconds, a child is being abused. So it's really all the way across. There is no seniors are getting abused. You name it. There is no age range that is more abused than the other. It's pretty across the board.
So when you get people, do you, based on sort of their age range or maybe their demographics, do you direct them to different resources? Do you direct sort of the college students or the younger age from the seniors you encounter, or is it more of a very general, this is how you get to this resource?
Well, it depends on what they need exactly, right? If they are in a relationship where they are at physical harm, where they could be killed, they need to go to a shelter. That's pretty much, and obviously, and then from the shelter, contact law enforcement and get the legal system involved, get a restraining order if necessary. There are all kinds of steps that need to take place. Sometimes college students have to do the same thing. Sometimes you get a restraining order. You don't have to be married to the person. If you have somebody stalking you, get the law enforcement involved and get a restraining order, get the school involved. The school should know. Definitely they should know what's happening if there's a case going on.
It's a hugely complex issue. Do you see yourself ever sort of getting involved in helping making this issue less complex? Do you ever see yourself getting involved in more of like the state level of these abuse issues? Or are you are you very, very content with what you've been doing, the work you've
I'm not content. I'm not content at all. Like I feel like I'm not even scratching the surface of the scratch of the surface of the scratch. there's so much work to be done, and so much. I think that the best way to make impact is not so much in the raising money for shelters and pointing people. Of course, we've saved a lot of lives over the 10 years, telling people where to go, and and this is where you can be safe. But if we want to make real change, it has to be on creating education and awareness on how do we not fall into these type of relationships in the first place? How do we prevent all of this from happening in the first place? And there are two ways, right? The foundation of it all is first, know your own self-worth and understand what your boundaries are. So, working on yourself is very important. And then second is actually educating yourself and understanding what are those red flags at the beginning of a relationship that don't seem like red flags. So what are those things, so that you can start paying attention and start seeing if there is a pattern? Because you can see something may not be quite right. It may be a one-off. That doesn't mean that other person is necessarily an abusive person. It could be just a bad day, right? So it's just a matter of being able to recognize, is this a pattern? So having that information and having that education is foundational in the prevention. So if we can prevent it, then we don't need, it's like teaching children, the fire, if you put your hand on the fire, you're gonna burn yourself. So it's better to teach the child not to burn themselves than collecting all this money and sending it to the hospitals for the burnt units, right? We would rather not see people hurt than having to keep putting money into hospitals that need to get bigger and bigger. And that's what's been happening with the shelters. It's like they run out of beds, they're turning people away, they don't have enough room. So that's not the solution. The solution is not constantly sending people to these places. The solution is to start creating an education system where people can be informed enough so that they can recognize it, put a stop to any potential harm that may be coming their way in the future. So if you go onto the website of the organization I'm talking about, we have all the pamphlets there, all the signs are there. It's spelled out, all kinds of abuse, whether it's digital abuse, whether it's stalking, it's all there. So
what's the name of the website and the organization name?
It's shimmymob.com. So shimmy as in, and then mob as the flash mob.com. So under the resources, all the information is there.
So you talk about the education. Is that where your consulting and mentoring comes in? Is that one of the primary focuses you have when you see clients?
Well, it's always part of it, because even if somebody comes up to me about starting a business, a lot of when you get into the business, your mindset has to be in a certain place. If you don't believe, you're not going to be able to achieve, right? As they say. And very often, because the stats are really high, very often there's been some kind of abuse in the past that gets in the way of the self-worth and the belief system, and maybe I'm not good enough, maybe I don't deserve this, or I don't think I can do this. So then that kicks in. So then I get into the whole personal development and the whole coaching part, working with mindset, getting over those obstacles as well. So that's how I come in. I don't necessarily work, I'm not a counselor, so I don't do one-on-one counseling or therapy with my clients. That's not what I do. But I organized a conference 4 years ago that was all on personal development, all on mindset. And I have another program that's coming in the next few months that I'm launching a new program on that as well.
So do you get mostly, corporations, companies coming in saying, hey, we want you to come in, mentor us, train us, or do you get a lot of individual groups?
I get a lot of individual entrepreneurs or wannabe entrepreneurs, people who want to start their business. So I don't really work with the big companies. That's not who my primary focus is on. I like to help the little person. I like to help the person that may not necessarily feel that they have all they got. I like to encourage them and show them they can do it, because I'm one of those people that I'm the most unlikely person to ever run a business. I had no business education. I had no business training that I found myself in a position where I lost everything. I was in the middle of a divorce. The job that I had barely paid the bills. I had legal bills going through the roof because I was going through my divorce. And at one point, somebody decided to set fire to the place where I was living. So I lost everything I had in there. I didn't have any house insurance. And then 10 days later, I lost my job because the company was not doing well. So now I found myself with, no home and no job, all within 10 days, barely, like, no income anymore. And my unemployment insurance only covered me so much. And it didn't matter how hard I looked for work, I was not getting hired. And lo and behold, today is September 11th. And it was exactly on September 11th that my interview stopped. And so I date myself, it was 19 years ago, but that's what happened. So I was looking for work, then 9/11 happened, and those interviews stopped because you're too young to know or to remember. Maybe you weren't even born then. But the companies weren't hiring. The mood was completely somber. No one was thinking of, no one knew what was going to be happening next. So, but my unemployment insurance was running out, and I had a child. I had my daughter. I'm like, well, I need to put food on the table. So I need to figure out how do we eat? And so I thought, nobody hires me, I hire myself. So I started the business really not really having too much of a clue. I did take a course on self-employment, but I had no experience. It wasn't something I was, passionate about doing, but I did become passionate afterwards. So I feel like from my experience, if I could do it, if I could become successful with my business, anyone else can.
So there was there a driving moment, like a single moment when you were like, okay, I have to do it? Like, were you on the couch? Were you just sitting there watching your daughter, something?
It was, I don't remember exactly what I was doing. It was not on the couch. I do remember when the fire happened, I was not at home. It was my friend that called me and she said, don't bother going home. There's nothing, like you can't go in. It's a crime scene. And at that moment, I decided I would no longer be a victim. I still had my job at that point, but it was 10 days later that I lost my job. And that just put me on that quest of, I need to find a job, but I was either not qualified enough or overqualified. I just seemed not to land anything. I honestly do not remember a specific moment where I was when I realized that if nobody hires me, I have to hire myself. I do not actually remember that moment, but I do remember that was the decision that I made, and it had to be done.
So what got you involved in the sort of consulting and the training and the mentoring? So you told me about what got you involved in your shimmy mob, but
Yeah.
what really got you to say, okay, I want to be a keynote speaker now. I want to be a growth strategist. I want to help entrepreneurs.
Okay, so very good question, because the business that I started at the time was a dance company. I figured if I was going to start a business, the best I could do is pick something that I would enjoy, because in my head, I thought I would hate business, the whole business part. So I thought I have to do something that I can find some joy in it while I'm doing the whole business side of it. So I thought, I'm going to teach adults how to dance, adults who had missed on taking dance classes when they were kids, and now they felt like they had missed out. So that's how it started. But then my company grew to the point where now I was training instructors on how to become freelancers, because I couldn't give full-time job to every single one of those instructors, because they all taught different styles, and it just didn't work. It doesn't work like that in the dance world. So I started training them on the business side so they could find work elsewhere as well as working for me. And that's where it kind of started. So when I decided to close the dance company, I kept the consulting from there.
That's really cool. So when did you start dancing? Have you danced since you were a child, or was it something you sort of got into later in life?
Well, I've always danced. I think I was dancing in the womb. But my official training started when I was my early 20s. So I was not, I was like my clients, right? My target market with the dance company was who I was. Because when I was taking classes and when I was started training, it wasn't, I started with ballroom, which is a lot easier as far as training, learning as an adult. But then when you want to get into ballet and jazz, I was going into the kids' classes and I was an adult and I felt really awkward. So I thought there would be a market for me to be able to target an audience that was similar to me, who had missed out, always wanted to have the training, but didn't want to go into a dance school where there were kids. So a place where that would be comfortable for them.
So I gotta ask, what was that demand like? Did you see initially a lot of growth? Was it sort of steady for a long time?
Good question. When I started, I did my market research and I knew I would get a response. I knew I would have uh, people coming. But my business advisors didn't believe I had a market. This is pre-Zumba days, at least here where I am. There was no Zumba, so no one knew of anything related to dance or even dance for grown-ups. Just the whole idea of getting adults to learn how to dance. And yeah, they didn't believe that it would work at all. But I stuck to my guns. I had my big open house and nobody came. My big open house, nobody showed up. I was like in tears, sitting in the middle of the dance floor. I'm like, what did I do wrong? I did everything by the book. I did my marketing. I did this and I did that. And then I realized that there was something missing in my marketing. I was not really reaching my market. So once I got that key point figured out, my classes sold out and it just grew from there. Like literally it just got rocketed and just was packed all the time.
So what was the key? You said there was something in marketing that you had to fix or figure.
Yeah, the key was this is pre Instagram, pre Facebook, there was no, I didn't know how to reach them. I had put posters on bulletin boards, I had put ads on newspapers. Even that didn't work. So I literally got into the head of my target market, which was women who worked, who did everything for the family and put themselves last. And I walked through their day, coming home, tired, picking up the mail, opening up the mail, and there they would be. Usually they would order takeout food, right? You order pizza because you're tired, you don't want to cook. So I realized that I needed to put myself right under their eyes. And that's what I did. I created brochures that looked like takeout menus. But they were all for dance class. So just think of a menu, like a food menu, a threefold. But instead of being food, it was all the different classes that I offered at the studio, and the dates, the price, everything was there. So there was no second guessing, and that's what worked. It was right under their nose, right with the where they would order. So, yeah.
That's genius. I've never even realized that or thought of that until you just now said that. That makes so much sense. What sort of I don't even know how to respond to that. That's so smart. I
Well, it's about getting into the head of your target market, right? Like if you know you're in the business, are you in the business program? Is that
No,
what
I'm
you
not
think?
in the science program, but we have a lot of business majors that would probably like to hear about this.
Okay, so if you really, so for anyone listening to this who is in the business and in the marketing, this is the key thing that really was the game changer for my business in general. And it really is, it's not just about creating your avatar. You really need to walk through their day. You need to walk in their shoes and you need to think about what are they really feeling and what are their biggest frustrations and what's going on. because for me it was, okay, the woman is going home, she's tired, she doesn't want to cook, she's going to look through the mail because she wants to order food. But I also had to take into consideration the timing of when she get paid. When is that check coming? So I always did it like a couple of days before payday. So that was the other thing as well. So timing is also a big key point of when it's not just about reaching your target market, but also that timing is factor.
So what do you think the biggest factor was for your success? Was it sort of having to deal with these hardships? Was it the motivation that you sort of came from all these things with? What do you think was the biggest thing that sort of drove you to become where you are today?
I think I want to always learn, and I like to use what I learn. I think that's part of it. And I want to always, I think I'm a born teacher. I always like to teach what I learn, and I like to inspire people. I think that's where it comes from. And you get a lot of validation when you have a client, or you have a group of students, and you see their growth because of what you were able to show them. That in itself fuels me, right? So you kind of it's not a one-way street, it's a two-way street. So you feel like you're giving, but they're giving back because you're seeing the results of what you've been giving. So it just fuels itself. And that's what I credit. I credit it to my clients, really.
That's I love that. That's sort of, you see someone else's success and it motivates you even further.
Yeah, that's the whole point. Why would you do it if, it's never about money. Yes, I started the business, because I needed to survive. But at the end of the day, it was always, the passion is bigger than the money. The passion for the people and what I do and the reason I do it is bigger than the payday.
So do you have any advice for students here who are looking to make their own business, or maybe later on in life want to sort of get into that field, want to eventually become as successful as you? What advice would you give to students, either male or female, anyone?
Never stop learning. Never assume you know better. Always take advice, even learn from criticism. Sometimes criticism is good. Sometimes there's truth in when somebody criticizes and what you're doing. Be okay with sometimes failing, and replace the word failure with lesson. There is no such thing as failure. So if you're not ready to start a business now, you don't have to, right? I don't think everybody should have a business, but I believe everybody should know how to run a business. Just because you don't know, COVID proved that. You just don't know when one day you may need to. And if you do choose to have a business, do something that you really like. And there have been sayings like follow your passion and the money will follow. You can't follow your passion and the money won't follow unless you do what needs to be done on the business side. So if you are in the business program, you would know a lot about business. But I think the one thing, if I can give one advice to people who are taking courses, is there's a lot more to learn, and that you will learn when you have your business that you did not learn at school. And be prepared for that. And just have fun with it. Have fun with it. No matter what happens, have fun with it. When things don't go the way you expect, that's okay. It just means just try it a different way.
That's some great advice. Even though I'm not going into business, I'm definitely going to take all of that and take it to heart. I really like that. And sadly, we're about out of time, but where can people find you?
You can just go to my website, francescaanastasi.com.
All right. And so I'm assuming your services are still available even as COVID goes on.
Oh, yeah. Like I said, busier than ever. So
busier
yes.
than ever.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on. And do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, I'm good. pursue your dreams, have fun, enjoy life, live with no regrets.
I absolutely, that's the best advice I think you could ever give someone. Thank you so much. And again, you can find her at, you can find Francesca at francescaanastasi.com, and as well as her foundation Shimmy Mob at shimmymob.com, I believe.
Yes, that's right.
All right. Let me see. Okay. And thank you guys for tuning in. And I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your week.